Gino, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit more regarding your background and how did you get into real estate?
Well, it started a long time ago. I was 18 years old. I was a professional musician, and we were renting a property that we had our music school and recording studio in. And the landlord wasn't very good. We looked down the street, saw a house for sale, and the rest is history. We bought the house, no money down because we had no money. Started doing some fix and flips, did a commercial property, and here I am 30 plus years later doing one thing, and that's residential assisted living.
Yeah, but you're skipping a lot of steps. So
yeah. I skipped 38 years in there.
Yeah, so for us, that a little bit more detail oriented. Run us through the first property and how can you build up from that?
Sure. Well, again, I think it always comes down to your why. When I talk to people, I always say, why do you do what you do? What is it you're looking for? And so for us, our why is, again, we were teenagers. I was 18. My brother, he was 20. So I'm a teenager. He's 20. We're young, but we had a music school and a recording studio. So we needed a building. That landlord that we were renting the building from was not a great landlord. The building wasn't in good condition, and we needed to either shut the business down or move someplace else. So the need is where everybody should start when it comes to your own, what you're doing and why you do it. So for me, it was we needed a place for our business. So that's why we got started. And then the how we got started, when there was no class, there was no podcast, there was no webinar, there was no place you could go to learn how to do what we now do. So literally, I called the real estate agent on the phone and said, tell me about the property. We found out it needed a bunch of work. And then it was, how do you finance the property? And we went to the one and only person that we knew that wasn't doing what we call a 9-to-5 job, just a regular job. And he owned a business. And we asked him, can you teach us how to buy real estate? And he did. He showed us how to do it. The first deal was no money down, which doesn't mean there was no money. It just wasn't our money. That's that no money down concept. So we raised capital from other people. It was $28,500 US. And that was way back in 1979. So now you know how old I am. And
you're 30.
Yeah, I'm 30. Yeah. And I've stayed that way for a long time. So in 1979, interest rates at that point hit 21% for prime rate. So interest was very high. The price was reasonable at the time, I guess, but it didn't matter. I didn't have money. He could have said $1 million and I didn't have it. So we went through that process. We got the financing. We moved our business in. We renovated that property using it for our own business and sold it 5 years later for a big profit of $90,000. And back in 1984, $90,000 is a big profit for two guys in their 20s who were musicians. So along the way, we did some fix and flip, buy it, sell it, make profit and move on. We did buy and hold, buy it, rent it. But none of that compares to what I'm doing today with the assisted living, where there's a lot of people that need it and a lot of people that pay a lot of money for it.
And can you run us through that? Because we had a lot of guests that operate huge on apartment buildings. So it's usually the multifamily buildings, and we all heard about it. So this is kind of a little niche. Can you run us through this type of business?
Absolutely. So what we do is we take a single family home, so not multifamily and not apartments, a single family home with bedrooms and kitchen and family room. And in that home, instead of just renting it out to somebody, we actually provide care. So when we say assisted living, somebody who moves into assisted living is somebody that is not able to fully take care of themselves. They need assistance. Somebody's going to help them with everything from medication management to food to housekeeping and so on. So we provide care, 24/7 care. It's not me. We hire manager who hires the caregivers who care for the residents. And those people who live in the home, the seniors, they're typically 80, 85 years old. They have camaraderie. They have friends, peers their own age that they're living with. It's men and women in that same house. And it's not a landlord-tenant relationship, so there's none of that. It's you're moving in, we're providing a service, 24-hour care. They typically pay in the US $3,750 per month per resident is the average number. So we actually focus on a little above average, so 4, 5, 6,000 per person US dollars per month. You would have typically 10 residents in a home. It could be 8, it could be 12, could be 16, but 10 residents. So you might have 5 bedrooms with 2 people in a bedroom, or you might have more bedrooms because you converted some space. They're sharing bathrooms, sharing the kitchen, they're sharing the family room, but they all get individual beds and potentially bedrooms, or they're sharing it with one. And the amount of money that's generated is more than enough to pay for the care and the food and the utilities. And then there's a healthy profit after that.
And what type of property is this? So what a typical purchase price of that property?
So a purchase price on that property, and again, in the US versus Portugal versus other places in the world, it's different. So for a home, we always think of how many bedrooms and baths, and then how much is it per square foot. So let's leave everything else out. Is it oceanfront? Is it on a mountain? Does it have a lot of acres? It's just a house in an average area. So a 3 bedroom, 2 bath house is a little small for what we do. So it might be a bigger home, let's say 3,000 square feet. Not sure exactly how many meters that would be, but 3,000 square feet. Let's say you now convert some of the space into additional bedrooms and maybe add additional bathrooms, but it could be on the low side, let's say $200,000 US. On the high side, it could be $1 million home. Now I have students, I teach people how to do this all over. I have students that have done it in the small and students that have done it in very large properties. And there's pros and cons, things that are good and bad about each one. But I always encourage people to do a nicer home where thinking about your own mother, your own father or grandfather or grandmother moving into a home, you want them to be comfortable, well cared for, plenty of space and amenities for everybody to live very comfortably in. So it might be a little bigger than normal. And I'd say that 200 is low and the $1 million is high. So cut it in half. It's a $500,000 home. It probably is 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. It probably has more than 2 bathrooms, might have 3, 4, or 5 bathrooms. It probably, maybe it started with 3 or 4 bedrooms, but now you've converted space and there might be 6 or 8 bedrooms.
Gene, you are a numbers guy like me. Regarding competition, since this is more business oriented, do you feel competition since people start looking at the numbers, see basically high rent to values, so they jump all over? So do you feel competition now, or still there's a lot of demand for that that has not been met yet?
I'm glad you mentioned the demand part, because competition is one, demand is the second. Is there room for more? So let me dig into the numbers a little bit for everybody.
Sure.
Number one, we always talk about the baby boomers in every country, and that's because the World War II, as we call it, ended in 1945. People came home, servicemen came home and got busy. That's what we talk about it. So there's a population explosion, right? There's this group of people that were born, and then a little bit of a lull, and then another group of people. So there's like a direct wall. I call it the silver tsunami. Now those people who were born in that time frame, 1946 to 1964, that time frame, on the front edge of that, they're about 71 years old, 72 years old. They're not in assisted living yet, but their parents are. Some of them are, but not typically. But they're coming. They're going to be in their mid 80s in 10 or 15 years from now. So when we talk about demand and how much need is there for senior housing and somebody to take care of them, it's really big right now, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And when this silver tsunami hits the shore and those people are 82, 85, there's a huge spike in demand. So when people see the returns, and that's why you got in touch with me, it's like there's money to be made. I want to learn how, and I want to show other people how. And that's part of our conversation we just had. The idea of the rates of return. There are people that are attracted to this just on the numbers, just on this is a great way to make a lot of money. On the other hand, there's people that are attracted to this because they really want to take care of people. So the care aspect. And the real magic in all this is it's the combination of these. It's the money, we can make good money, and it's the people, we can provide a great service. So when we put that together, it really brings a lot of people into this. On the other hand, there's barriers to entry. That's the way I would say it, is that anybody can just buy a house and rent it to somebody and make cash flow. And whether you make profit or lose money just depends on the location, the rent, what economic class of people we're renting to, and so on. But in this business, we can charge a lot of money because we're providing care. But if you're only focused on just the money part, it's going to be harder for you because you won't want to go through the hassles, the barrier to entry. Because to do it right in most areas, you need some kind of a license. The license itself is not necessarily hard to get or overly complicated, but it gives a barrier to entry. You need to hire people. So a manager, my job is to oversee the manager, to manage the manager. Her job is to find people, the caregivers that are providing that care for the residents there. And so the caregivers, somebody has to hire them. It's not me, it's the manager. So now we talked about hiring people. And as soon as I said these two things, you got to have a license, and then you have to deal with people, managers, and people are like, that's it, I'm out. So there's a lot of people that'll just say, I don't want to do it because it's too much work, and I'm okay with that. And then there's others. We just had our class this weekend. We do a class 8 times a year here in the US in Phoenix, Arizona. People fly in from all over the country and even internationally for the class. We just got done with the class literally yesterday, about 14 hours ago. We were done with the class, and there was people from all over the country that are there. They now know what the rules of the game are. They understand what it takes to find the right real estate in the right location, how to finance it, then how to get the manager who's going to hire the caregivers and how to operate. So now they've got the knowledge base, and now it's up to them to implement. But I'm realistic. Not everybody's going to be willing to get through what it takes, because the money we can make is huge, but we have to decide we want to do it.
Gotcha. And also regarding taxes, are there any tax advantages of doing this versus investing in regular apartment buildings?
You can, if you want to, do this in a not-for-profit tax entity, a foundation, something where there are additional benefits available to you. Practically speaking, though, even those entities make profit. You know, we just had the big football game here in the US, the Super Bowl, and the NFL, the National Football League, was a not-for-profit organization up until 3 years ago. It's not that they're not making billions of dollars in profit. It's just a tax structure. Sure. So realistically, who pays the taxes and so on, somebody's going to pay taxes. So whether you do structure it so you're a not-for-profit and you get some charitable donations and a certain tax write-off, ultimately you're still going to want some of that money for yourself. And as soon as it comes into your hands, somebody's going to pay taxes on it.
And at this time, how many units do you have?
Myself personally, I have 3 of these units, single family homes converted for this purpose. When I first started, my thought was I want to have 4, because 1 is enough to live on. You can make all the money you need, most people, to be comfortable. So I thought as well, 2 would be good. It gives me a little cushion. So I said, well, let me do 4. And as I started to do it, after I did the first one and then the second one and the third one, and each one was a little bit nicer, I said, I've got enough. I've got plenty of money coming in. I don't need more for me. And that's just it. Everybody has to decide, what's your why? Why do you do what you do? Once you make a certain amount of money and you're got a certain comfort level, you can decide if you want more or you don't need more. I happen to love to teach. So people were asking me to show them how, and I was willing and able to. So that's what I'm focusing on now, is spreading the word.
Sure. So if you were given a proper opening capital for outside investors to get in those types of deals, basically you are not you're not doing it at least right now.
You mean to invest in those deals?
Yes.
Well, I've had so many people, to be blunt, that just want to get in this business. They want to get in. There's people that call and just say, I just want to invest. I just want to write a check, put it into a deal. That's all I want. I don't want to operate. I don't want to learn how. I just want to write a check and invest. So because of that, and because the students that we have raise capital for their projects, we have created a company for that. I'm not raising capital for me, but what I do is I present in different locations, and then I point to those students and say, here's a good project in this area. Here's the numbers. Talk to them. So if you have somebody that's interested in investing, I certainly can point them to projects. They just aren't mine at this moment.
Sure. And just regarding the operation side of it, how long does it usually take from getting the idea and getting the whole business up and running? So let's say you find a location. So it takes you what, 3-6 months until you get the the residents and the people that take care of the operations?
So
How's the time span?
got it. And I'm going to answer it two ways. One, if they don't come to my class, if they don't learn what to do from somebody else who's done it before, they may never get it done. There's so many barriers to entry that they're going to hit, whether it be licensing or location or how do I fill the house and how do I hire people. They may simply never get through it. I have met people that spent years trying to figure it out on their own, and they did it, but they took 2 years, 3 years to do what they could have done in 6 months. So let's assume that somebody has learned what to do, whether it's from me or somebody else you magically found that's willing to show you how. If you were to come to my class, the people who just left yesterday, they know where to do it, they know how to do it, they know how to get the money to do it, they know what parts they're going to play and what others are going to play. So if they were to find a house, get it renovated and licensed, that's going to take 3 to 6 months to do. To get the business open, it's now open to fill the house. That may take another 3 to 6 months to fill to get you to your full maximum potential. Now, it's kind of like saying if I was going to build an apartment complex, how long would it take to find the land, build the house, start it up, get the tenants? It's going to take you a year or two to do that. If you were to buy somebody else's, so these homes exist today, you could buy somebody else's already up and running. Obviously, you're going to save yourself a lot of time. We call that paying for speed. You're going to buy somebody else's existing business. Now, the only way to do that is make sure that it's a good one to buy. You don't want to buy a bad business. They're selling it because something is wrong. It's mismanaged. They had an issue. Maybe it's a public relations issue, which you don't want to buy that trouble, that problem. So if it's worth buying, you could literally move in and be cash flowing on day one or 30 days later. So it really depends is the short answer, but I wanted to give you more depth.
Sure. And I thank you for that.
Sure.
Advice to your younger self, what would you say?
That's a good question because, again, gray hair, gray beard, been doing this a long time. And I meet a lot of people who are just getting into real estate. Whether they're young or old, it's new in this business. And if they're just getting in, most of the time they think about the fast money. I'm going to buy something, I'm going to shine it up and sell it. We call that fix and flip. And that is exciting. But if you make $20,000 and then taxes, you pay 30 or 40% of that in taxes, that's not that exciting when you're all done. In addition, as soon as you sold it, you're kind of unemployed. You got to go find the next project. So you're constantly searching for good deals. Little problematic. So again, I understand if you're brand new, it's exciting. I just want to make quick money, but those are your two issues. You make it, you pay taxes, and now you're unemployed. You got to go find it again. And the better the real estate market is, the faster it's going up, the more people are coming in, makes your life more complicated. So the second way that a lot of people say is, well, I want residual income. So you look, and we talked about this, cash flow in Portugal is different than cash flow in the US or other countries. So if you buy this asset, this house, and you rent it out, and then after all of your expenses, debt service, tax, insurance, repairs, you have money left over. We call that cash flow. Positive cash flow is we made money. If it's $100 per month and you need $10,000 a month with your lifestyle, you need 100 of those properties. Or if you have an apartment building, you need 100 units. So if we have that 100 units, whether it's single family or two family or 100 units in one building under one roof, we've got our $10,000. So if that's your goal, if that's your why, and if you could do it with just one single family home, like I do, in an average area, in an average location, and make your $10,000 a month, what would you rather do?
Gotcha. And also looking ahead for the future, where do you see yourself and your company heading forward?
With our company, where we really now have 4 different companies, the one is the education side. So RAL Academy, that's what you see behind us. So Residential Assisted Living Academy, that's all about the training, teaching people how to do it themselves. That's one. The second company that I mentioned to you, the Family Legacy Homes, is where people can invest in. So that one will be growing. Eventually, we will do more projects. I'm just not focused on that right now. The third one is the Assisted Living Network. So podcasts, TV, all kinds of media, whether it be articles and books and so on, we're doing that. But bigger picture, in this industry, what will happen? right now there's multi-billion-dollar companies, publicly traded companies that build big box facilities. There's 100 beds, 200 beds, and they're country clubs, and people pay a lot of money to move in, and then monthly they pay money. I don't want to compete with them. They are big money, not necessarily smart money. People don't quite get that, but just because you have billions of dollars doesn't mean you're necessarily going after the same thing. Because if they have $1 billion in the bank earning 1% interest, that's not helpful. They need to get that money deployed. So they may build this big, huge building that makes them a 4% return, and they're excited about that. I'm not. If I do that, I want to make a 20 or 30% return on my money in that single family home. And if I use leverage, meaning borrow and use other people's money, then we can make a 60 or 80 or 100% return. And I know that sounds outrageous to a lot of people that are listening, but that's what you do in this industry. So what the bigger picture is this, is that right now the big guys with the big money are building the big box, the big facility. I don't want to compete with them. I'm doing, and I teach people how to do the single family home, if you will. We're flying under the radar, but there's lots of these homes. And eventually the big guys are going to want to buy our homes. And they're not going to want to buy one home. They're going to want to buy 100 homes. They don't want to write a small check for $500,000. They want to write a big check for $200 million. So those people that are coming through my training that have the bigger vision of, I want to do a bunch of these homes so I can pool it together and sell it off. Well, that's exactly what they'll be doing, selling it for hundreds of millions of dollars. Whether it's 2 years from now or 10 years from now, I don't know. But that's where I see the whole industry going.
Gotcha. And regarding books, because I'm a bookworm and I share my book list with everyone. So share with us, with our listeners, some of your favorite books, something that got you excited lately.
You know, it's really interesting because you mentioned the idea of reading books, and I'm a different kind of reader. I'll use the word periodicals, whether it be newspapers or magazines or articles, because to read 200-300 pages for me, but to read a bunch of little things where I can do a few pages. So I'm more of an article reader and publication reader. The internet is my biggest tool right now, but I do have hundreds of books, most of them which I haven't read. But one of the ones that I've read recently that I think is very helpful, it's on business, not real estate, is called Traction. Very helpful. That's something we're implementing this year. One other book I'll give you the title for, The One Thing. The One Thing, and that's what it's called. It's to the gist of the book, so you don't even have to read it, is what's the one thing that you can do right now that'll make everything you do easier or unnecessary? So for me, when I read that book, it was, I need an assistant. I need somebody to help me do certain things. I got the assistant, and that has led to the point where I now have 12 people on staff, and we have a much, much bigger company, because instead of me doing everything, now I've got a lot of people that can do pieces of much better than I can. And those two books will change your life.
Gotcha. It was wonderful having you with us today. I will speak with you soon.
Thank you so much.